Now raise your voice. Oh, let us all, Jimmy Lakey, get out of bed. Jimmy Lakey, raise your voice. Jimmy Lakey, Lakey, hey, can't live without it with Jimmy Lakey. Jimmy Lakey.
Well, top of the morning to you. How is everybody? Good to have you here on the Lakey Unleashed Daily Update, right live from the House of Lakey. Welcome into the House of Lakey. All things Lakey at the Lakey Entertainment Tower, Cigar Palace. And again, nice to have everybody here. If you're new to the program, years and years of corporate talk radio, and now we're doing our own thing, making our own, marching to the beat of our own drum here on the Lakey Unleashed podcast, broadcast, stream, whatever you want to call it. Glad to have all of you here on the program. And good morning to you. It is Thursday morning, the 9th day of January, year of our Lord 2025. And by the way, everybody on the what page are you listening to? Facebook.com/Jimmy Lakey fan page. That's my page. Facebook.com/Red Wave America, the media equalizer, also on Facebook. Good morning to all of you. If you're following us on the X this morning, good to have you. That's Jimmy Lakey. Give me a follow there. And also Rumble's Jimmy Lakey. YouTube is Jimmy Lakey. Instagram this morning is also my name. So good to have all of you tuning in throughout the course of the morning. I appreciate it as we get this new endeavor from the House of Lakey underway. Pleasured, pleased, and thrilled. Don't forget, on all the platforms that I just aforementioned, you can actually comment. You can actually post your comments and say hello to us from this wherever you're at. Rich is there. I see he's in the deep freeze of Missouri still. And Jeff and Cassie noticing the new backdrop there, the House of Lakey logo there. You see that? That's fancy, isn't it? We're fancy like that. And anyway, wherever you're listening at, I'm happy to have you. And good to be here on the program. The black wall is gone. The hammer is going away. Let me get the hammer. The hammer is tangled. See, this is why I can't have a hammer. The hammer is going away. We built the backdrop, and it's all good. So anyway, for now, our studio sponsor is my charity organization. You'll see that Rivers Promise back there. That'll change out soon. If you'd like to be the studio sponsor, it's still up for bid, and we'll love to have you be our studio sponsor. Then your logo would be right behind me at any moment throughout the course of the morning. So feel free. Good to have you tuned in. Thank you very much. Advertise with us. Just send us an email at info@jimmylakey.com, info@jimmylakey. That's my name, by the way. Info@jimmylakey.com, and we will have a conversation about how your logo will be permanently ensconced on the wall behind me, and you will get nonstop visibility for all the people watching this right here. All right, we're changing some things up here, and we're changing the banner. Some of you see kind of a black ring around my face. We're not sure why that's there. We're trying to fix that. It doesn't look bad. It just doesn't let you go real full screen. So we'll fix that, and we're trying to figure it out. We couldn't figure it out this morning, so not sure what the old app is doing for us, but it's not there. All right, big news, big news and sad news. And we're following this news in California on fire, and not in a good way at all. It's the more that comes out about this fire, there's always something interesting about the way the media covers something when it's happening in California or New York, because they have this plethora of reporters there, and they make a big deal out of it. I'm not saying the California fire is not a big deal, but it's just amazing how they're covering this. I think probably differently than if this would have been a fire in Kansas City or a fire in Dallas. They just the New York, LA people are obviously more in. And again, it is a news story, don't get me wrong, but I just think it's funny as to how they cover these fires versus how they cover the Marshall Fire in Colorado, which burned up a lot of Superior, Colorado, near Boulder, and Louisville. They burned up a lot of that, and you just didn't see that. Again, population centers are different, but it is fascinating to just kind of watch the media cover itself in its own hometown. I think they covered a little bit differently. Again, not that it's not a news story, don't get me wrong, but it's just fascinating to watch. It interrupts there's no other news out there that you can find except this news. And again, big deal, but it's just fascinating to watch. An observation. It's kind of like if you have a winter storm or a blizzard or something that's going to hit the East Coast, it's nonstop talk. If you have a blizzard that's going to hit Colorado, perhaps, or Wyoming, it's just kind of a news story and a weather person. So it's just funny to watch, interesting to watch. Now, there's a lot of tragedy coming out of this. And one of the tragedies is that Gavin Newsom and the people that run California have been such idiots, and it looks like more and more a lot of this could have somehow perhaps become preventable. You will always have fires. Wildfires are going to be a part of it. But for instance, I find more and more stories that there's a separate board in California that controls when there is not going to be a prescribed burn, or what they call a back burn. And evidently this board, since October, had been declaring that there's going to be no prescribed fires. And so a lot of this brush and buildup, because it was considered a danger and a threat to the natural environment, you had to go. You've heard of maybe, you couldn't do you couldn't do the landscaping. You had to be all natural, or some of you will understand. You couldn't do any manscaping. You had to be all natural. And so the landscape of the landscape of California, rather than being prescribed burn and trim back, looked like a 70s porn star. It was not. Yes, I just said that. Thank you. It was not well trimmed, and because it was not well trimmed, the fire spread, and a lot of that has to do with the policies of Gavin Newsom. Donald Trump put out on Truth Social yesterday that there was also an opportunity for Gavin Newsom to have more water come into the state of California, but he refused to sign on to the compact because he was afraid it would affect the smelt or the little fishies or something. This is really, even though it's an act of God and a wildfire is an act of God, it really, my friends, is a lot of this, I think, is man-made. And Gavin Newsom and the jackwagons that run California and the leftists that run that state, they're to blame for this, because a lot of this could have been preventable. Just got a message here in my studio. Did you just say that the California landscape was like a 70s porn star? It was untrimmed? Yes, I said that. I did say that. Thank you, and you're welcome for that. But so follow this story. It's going to be very interesting to follow as to, is California going to finally have a wake-up call? Is California going to finally wake up and say, we've got to get these idiots and stop running our state? They've got to have these policies that are putting radical environmentalism over just practical common sense stuff, that you got to trim the landscape. You got to do some backburn. You got to do prescribed burns. So if you're out in California watching us this morning, God bless you. We're thinking of you. And if you would, send us a message, comment on whatever platform you're listening to, and love to get your thoughts. What is it like out there? I have a friend of my son, and I call him one of my sons. He goes to college on the LA area. He actually went to Africa with us, and he just got back from Africa, home 48 hours, and flew back to California to go to college, back to class. He's from Colorado, though. And I messaged him last night. I said, how's the fire? Have you been evacuated? He said, so far we have not been evacuated. He says, it's kind of an apocalyptic scene. He says, my car is totally covered in ash every time I go out, though we have not been evacuated. He's in the LA area, but a lot of this could have been, it looks like, preventable. The lack of water that they're having is something that's preventable. The lack of prescribed burns, that's something that was put on by policies. A lot of you know that I sometimes quote a great comedian. His name is Steve Byrne. And we put up a lot of his memes. We steal memes from Steve Byrne because he's hilarious. Well, Steve Byrne has been on fire in his comedic way regarding the stupidity of these. Here's one. Here's one of Steve Byrne's. Governor Gavin Newsom is out of water and said it would take a retardant to fight the fire. That's when I handed him a bucket. Now, you're not supposed to say the retardant, right? He handed him a bucket. Now, let me tell you a sad story about Steve Byrne. He found out that his home in Pasadena has burned down to the ground. So some of his comedy is just lambasting the governor there. Here's what he said. This is his, I printed this off of his social media feed. Steve Byrne says it's gone. And he posted some photos, as we're high tech here, some photos of his, this is my home in Los Angeles, Pasadena. It's right near the Eaton Canyon Park. And you see him and his family. There's his kids in the pool in the backyard. He says it's right near the Eaton Canyon Park. It, along with so many wonderful residents with loving families that were our neighbors, are now without homes. My heart, my prayers, emotions have all been swayed all day. They've been swaying all day. From fond memories to the strife and the adversity so many are dealing with, and now homelessness, I'm sending lots of love to all of my family, and I've spent the day Going through photos of our time in our home that no longer stands, we saw first steps, we saw laughter, we saw some scrapes, some bruises, birthdays in our home. I can only imagine how much more difficult it's going to be for too many families in California right here. Let me pause. One of the things to reflect on that's happening in California is the jackwagonness that they were locked in. One of the reasons you didn't see a lot of new homes, for instance, if you look at Steve Burns' home that I just showed, it's actually probably a 60s or 70s construction, but it's worth bazillions of dollars, right? And the reason you see these old constructions that they never got scraped and rebuilt is because idiots that run California, if you ever scraped a lot and rebuilt it, you had a new tax rate. But if you owned your home long time, you were grandfathered into the other tax rate. So your property tax was going to be a heck of a lot lower. So a lot of folks keep the old houses and they just remodel the guts and the bones inside. Here's what else Steve Burns says. He says, all that said, the leadership in California is to blame for how excessive this got. From the lack of water retention, last year, over 4 billion gallons went to the Pacific Ocean. We didn't keep it here in the state because we thought it might harm some otter or something somewhere. We don't want a reservoir there. So the lack of water that we have here, we've had billions of dollars ago. The lack of water across from water hydrants running dry, antiquated power lines, stoppage of controlled burns, FEMA money, all of this. So Steve Burns is laying out, I think he's a national voice, and I think there's going to be hopefully an opportunity for the folks in the California area to finally change their wily ways and stop being as stupid as what they have been. But it's real sad what you're watching there. But the more that comes out about this thing is this. The more that comes out, this was a totally preventable thing. Now, the fire wasn't preventable, but the growth of this fire was preventable, except we had really bad policies in California that did crazy, crazy things. And it's really sad. So keep all the folks in California, if you're in California listening to the Lakey Unleashed Daily Update, sound off in your chat room and wherever you are at. And it would be fantastic to hear from you. Let us know what you're hearing out there indeed. But the fires are still, I think, 0% containment. And Gavin Newsom says it's not my fault. The mayor of Los Angeles has come back, and she's as dumb as a box of bricks. I mean, she I'm not sure. I would say she's like she's not the sharpest pencil. I'm not sure she's ever been to the pencil sharpener. That's how dull she is. So California, you're run by idiots. And you have no one to blame but yourself that you elect these idiots. And it's their policies, as comedian Steve Burns says, that has really caused a heck of a lot of problems. Let's show a couple of producer Chad. Let's show a couple of more of these Steve Burn memes. We had the Newsom. We just showed this one. If you missed it, the retarded one. Steve Burn, the comedian, his house burned down. Said a new study says penis size, the average penis size in America is 5.57 inches. He says in California, the biggest penis is 6'3". That's funny. I'm sorry. It says, here's what also Steve Burn, whose house burned down, said California Governor Newsom woke up to his state on fire. He probably thought he had died. Now, there's some truth to that, indeed. It's sad, but at least Steve Burn, I printed out photos. Those are the only memories he have as his home and his family, because it burned down. It burned down because of the policies of Gavin Newsom and these idiots out there that, again, let billions of gallons of water go away because they were afraid of the smelt that would be disrupted. They've caused their own drought. They spent billions of dollars enacting all sorts of Green New Deal policies when a lot of times they could have spent that money burying the power lines, which would have made things more safe in these areas. Well, but they didn't bury power lines because they were going to spend all the money that they had. Oh, did you hear that Los Angeles, under their Mayor Bass, actually cut the budget by billions of dollars of the fire department because they needed to enact some new environmental policies? So they cut the budget of the fire departments there by billions of dollars. These people are idiots, my friends. As a matter of fact, I think at this point, watching what's happening in California and how it could have not been so excessive, these people go from being idiots to almost being evil. And I think it's on display before us that you have elected Gavin Newsom and Mayor Bass and some of these idiots out there. You have elected not just idiots. You in California have elected evil people that have put their policy and their agenda They put the policy and the agenda above the actual people out there. All right, don't forget to be commenting. Jeff writes in, drones on the East Coast, fires on the West Coast. Yeah, where are the locusts going to come in at? There's got to be some locusts coming in somewhere. Jim says maybe they need to invest in some low-tech solutions like gasoline, diesel-powered water pumps to get water from the ocean to fight the fires from the seaside homes. Oh, Jim, you're talking practical sense by evil and idiotic people like Gavin Newsom that run the state of California. Hey, by the way, you think the policies of California are stupid? Guess what? You have a man that's a governor of the great state of Colorado where I live that's equally as stupid and equally as dumb and would love. I often said on the terrestrial radio show that Jared Polis has nothing but a case of California envy. He's got a case of Gavin Newsom envy. Jared Polis wishes he had a man like Gavin Newsom in his life. I mean, he just loves him. And he would wish he had a hairline like Gavin Newsom. And so you in Colorado, you need to know that your governor looks at Gavin Newsom and all these idiotic policies and says, hey, me too. Can I do some of this stupidity? And Jared Polis has done a lot of the same stupid stuff that Gavin Newsom has already done. Gavin Newsom and his state are just further down the path. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, good to have you. We'll continue to follow the fires, and we'll get some more stolen memes going. I didn't do all of them. I just wanted to jump those in here early. We often like to talk about, well, we talk a variety of topics on the show, and you're welcome for that. We do a variety show here, but the stock market. And one of the things that I was watching on one of the news channels this morning, they were talking about insurance companies and how they're going to be faring on the stock market because billions of dollars of insurance claims obviously going to be coming in to the insurance companies. And how are the insurance companies actually going to fare on that? But also talking about 2025, the prognostication. I've got a story here. They're predicting that gas prices are going to dip in 2025, fueling one of Donald Trump's campaign promises. So all of this is about the economy. All of this is about the markets. All of this is about what is 2025 going to look like. And let me welcome into the program our friend Joshua Lewis with my old friends at Lehman Lewis Financial Group here in the great state of Colorado. Joshua Lewis, one of the big dogs there. Joshua, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Great to be with you this morning.
Great to have you here. We'll talk about kind of predictions of 2025. But events like this that are happening in California, we've had our own fair of storms and fires in Colorado. Do guys like you that follow the market wake up the last couple of mornings and look at these stocks of what the insurance companies are and find out if your people are positioned right in these insurance companies and their investments?
Yeah, so to a certain extent, we have exposure to insurance companies over a long period. Insurance companies are kind of your ultimate pragmatic investors. So a lot of conservatism there, a lot of slow growth, but you're absolutely right. There's going to definitely be some pressure there. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depends on, I guess, what side of the pendulum you are on. State Farm dropped somewhere like 77,000 some homes from home insurance for wildfire insurance over the last several months in the state of California. So a lot of those folks whose houses burned down actually are not covered by homeowners insurance. So I think kind of interesting. We've seen similar stuff in Florida, but they look at the risk of, climate change or extreme weather, whatever you want to call it, and they recognize that's a significant liability to their book of business. So you've seen them sort of drop off the coverage with a lot of those folks.
Yeah, I saw actor James Wood, who lives in a very nice home, a conservative fella. He tweeted that he got dumped a month ago in one of these neighborhoods. He got dumped from insurance and was having a tough time finding a new policy. And I'm not sure if his house is burned down, but if so, he's on his own. I mean, he couldn't find anybody who covers his house. I know in Florida, they dumped a bunch of people for flood insurance. So it's the insurance market is going to have to reinvent itself, I guess, because you're paying for insurance, but a lot of the things that you're trying to insure against evidently not going to be covered.
Yeah, no, and we even saw this in North Carolina too, where a lot of folks, they didn't have flood insurance because they didn't need it. They were in a historical flood zone, and look what happened. So I think this is definitely going to be a continuing problem where we see a lot of people with either just a complete lack of coverage or a severely limited coverage, and it's going to get perpetuated further down the road.
Yeah, I know in Colorado I had to redid my homeowner's insurance, and I found out that in renewing my redoing my homeowner insurance, I had a hail damage claim, and I was shopping it out because the rates were going up, and all the new policies basically said they will not cover a new roof on a home. They will only cover like 80 or 70% of the new roof. They used to be full coverage, and evidently a lot of the new policies don't do full coverage as on roof because we have so many hailstorms in Colorado, and everybody was getting a roof every couple of years, and so again, paying for homeowners insurance, but if the roof gets damaged again, I'm on the hook for I'm on the hook for a lot of it.
Yeah, and we're actually, when you look at it, Colorado is one of the top 3 states for severe weather. And it's like you said, east side of Colorado, we get those severe winds, the massive hailstorms, and then the west side, we get major wildfires. So we're kind of at the top of the list there to maybe see, us on the chopping block there for certain types of homeowners or home insurance, get diminished.
Yeah. Let me, before we get to the stock market and predictions and prognostications and thoughts from you of 2025, I was following you and Alicia, your family. You guys were vacationing a few months ago, this past summer, and your home in Colorado was under an evacuation zone. So you didn't know if your house was standing, or you didn't know if your house had burned. You didn't know how close it was. You just knew that even if you were in Colorado, you were vacationing, you couldn't be in your home. I had the same experience at one point, living down near the Black Forest area in Colorado, and I was in Africa, and we were evacuated, and I had neighbors go in and say, "Hey, before you go to my house and grab some treasures for me, and get out of there," because I didn't know the house was going to be standing later on or not. Talk about that emotion, that feeling when your homestead, where you raise your kids, as Steve Byrne, the comedian, said, first steps happened in that home, great memories and parties, and that just emotion of not knowing if your home's there.
Yeah, that's a interesting dynamic. You're out in the world, you spend a lot of money to go on vacation and trying to do the fun things. And actually that night we were coming back we had gone on a tour of the Vatican actually, and we were on our way to meet some friends for dinner, and I get a phone call, and then right on the heels of that, Alicia gets a phone call, and it's a emergency alert service from the Larimer County Sheriff's Department saying you're under a mandatory evacuation order. You need to be out of your house within, I think, 6 hours. And so you're kind of pressed with this idea of what do we do? And ultimately, when you're across an ocean, what do you do, right? By the time you reconfigure plane tickets, hop on a plane and get back, it's not like you're going to be able to go home. They're not going to let you get the garden hose by any means and do what you can do. So it's really just kind of almost paralyzing with fear because you don't know, and then you rely on other people. And luckily we have a great network of friends and family. So I was getting some updates from some people that are like, "Hey, I'm sitting in your driveway right now. Everything looks good." And so getting a little reassurance there, but you're sort of just relying on what you can find in the media and a lot of question marks. And then of course, when you look on the news, it's just the most ominous, smoke and clouds, and you're like, oh, but
yeah. It is emotional. I was following that saga and remember it well because I went through the same way several years ago in the Black Forest area, the big Black Forest fire, mandatory evacuation, and I'm miles away. Nothing you can do. And again, by the time you fly home, there's nothing you can do. The California one, it's easy. There's a lot of, I think, navel gazing, if you will, about Gavin Newsom and the policies there. But hey, there's real people out there that are affected by this, and keep them in your prayers. All right, Joshua Lewis, Lehman Lewis Financial Group. You can reach out to them at lehmanlewis.com anywhere across America. You can do that on the new podcast venture, the broadcast venture we're doing. Let's talk about 2025. What are we? The market's been down kind of overall. It's one of my friends said it's been a real poopy market since about November. He used something, a different word besides poopy, but he says it's been a poopy market since November. What are we seeing? What have we seen? And does the start of 2025 cause investors to rethink some things?
Yeah, so anytime you get a new year, obviously you're going to see maybe some, tax loss harvesting towards the end of the year. We didn't really get the Santa Claus rally we were hoping for. I think kind of the post-election day, that was really just a big jump up in the markets. And I think a lot of people anticipated that continuing in a certain fashion, and it really didn't. And so I think we're getting to a point now where we got our, 0.25% rate cut there in December. But I think the forward guidance was that, the Fed's going to be a little more hawkish. The data looks like we're kind of entering more into, an inflationary period again. So inflation isn't going away. So I think you're getting a lot of just kind of repositioning in terms of allocations for portfolios. Definitely some profit taking we've seen in a lot of the AI space. So we've seen kind of some of those, hot stocks plateau off to a certain extent. But I think it's kind of to be expected to a certain extent. Anytime you have a new administration coming into office, you're going to see a lot of just portfolio positioning in anticipation of what people think. So I really do anticipate seeing a dip here in Q1, just as things sort of settle into that new administration and people adjust according to where we see that legislation going. So a little of it's seasonal, but I think a little of it's cyclical, just considering that we are entering into a new presidential sort of cycle here.
Now, what are we seeing with the Fed? The Fed continues to do a little haircut on the rates. However, it looks like you look at the CPI, Consumer Price Index, we're not out of the woods on inflation yet. So do you think the Fed has cut too much too soon? Do you think inflation is going to continue to decline? What are we seeing here on the CPI?
Yeah, so I think CPI is going to be pretty darn steady, to be honest. When you look at kind of the Fed minutes from December when they cut rates, of course, they're always going to say it's data dependent, right? We're going to track the beige book. We're going to look at the dot plot. And I think that just gives them, a little bit of stance and credibility. But I think ultimately, when you look at kind of where we're at, you look at the employment market, right? Job openings were much higher than what was anticipated. So all of those things say inflationary environment. So when you look at a lot of kind of the campaign promises, even from the Trump administration, it's going to take a lot of money to make America great again, right? And all of that spending is, of course, inflationary. So I think the likelihood of seeing dramatic rate cuts, I don't think is really on the table for this year. One, maybe two rate cuts, because again, I think CPI is going to remain elevated to a certain extent.
I always hear, sometimes you'll see a news story and they say the market's reacted to that. Talk about how that happens, because you've got guys on this trading floor, they're trading and things. Are they really watching the news over there and going, oh, I'm going to change my mind, I just saw a news story break and all of a sudden things dip? Are they really watching this thing in real time? Because they say the market's reacted to this story today, and are the markets really reacting?
To a certain extent, obviously we live in a world that's, just this 24-hour news cycle, right? It's a blessing and a curse at the same time. So you can get a lot more, just direct information. So you see that come through the tape to a certain extent, but you also look at like the Bloomberg machines of the world, right? Where they're actually tracking, trading volume and who's buying what and that sort of thing. So with all of that data too, you're actually seeing market reactions in real time. So you're able to really kind of assess how people across the world are watching news. So even if you're not, a trader on the floor at the NYSE, you're still getting some of that information just in terms of what people are buying, how much volume there is, and kind of where those price point thresholds are going to be at. So there's a lot of kind of data extrapolation just in terms of what people are buying or selling.
Globally, people look at America. They want to, obviously, American corporations, our American stock market, all the stuff. You got now a new president-elect. He's going to become president again, 47 in just a couple of weeks. He's kind of been bullish here. He's like, we're going to take back the Panama Canal. We're going to buy Greenland. We're going to make Canada a state. Maybe he's let's say bullish. He's very optimistic and seems to have a big, bold plan. Does that make global and even domestic, but even global investors go, wow, America's turned a leaf and they're on the march forward? Does that cause people to want to put their money in American companies and American corporations more than maybe perhaps before?
I think to a certain extent, there's always going to be some of that momentum, right? And I think Trump is such just a polarizing individual that a lot of people, it's easy to get on the bandwagon, right? And, the rah sort of metric. So I think to a certain extent, global investors see that. But I think also to the same extent, we've had, a Trump 4-year administration already. So I think we kind of know what to reasonably expect. So I think some of those expectations from a lot of people are based on what we've already seen. And to be honest, he's a man of action, right? So he's going to take measurable steps. And I think that's going to boost investor confidence over a period of time.
All right. Obviously, Donald Trump is not a big fan of the Green New Deal, and he's going to release some of these car companies from mandates that they seem to already be wanting to be released from. Are there sectors like the auto industry or the oil and gas industry that are going to thrive or not thrive under this new administration? And as you're watching it for your clients with fiduciary duty that you have, you want to make the best deals for them. What are those markets and those industries that you're looking at going, this might be a really good play, or hey, yeah, I want to pull out of this one because this is not going to be a good play?
Yeah, so I think some sectors to avoid. Obviously, China is an interesting market there. They're in some serious economic trouble. They're not the best with their money in terms of just how they've invested government spending, that sort of thing. So obviously, Trump is not a big fan of China, as he says. So definitely companies with major exposure to manufacturing in China, I think, are going to have some, inroads that are going to be a little bit difficult. So I think that road's going to be a little bit bumpy. I think oil and gas energy market is probably going to rip pretty well this year. It's going to be a little bit delayed, though. You look at some of the things that the Biden administration is trying to ramrod through there. So looking at moratoriums on drilling. So there's going to be some legislation in place that's going to look to lift some of those moratoriums, expand some of those leases for oil and gas drilling. So I definitely would agree that it's likely gas prices will come down, but I think we're going to see a little bit of a lag there. We also need to resupply the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So that's going to be a little expensive, and that's going to move prices around with gas there. But I think oil, energy in general is probably going to have a good year. Financial services, anytime you see deregulation, and that's a big, kind of campaign promise from the president-elect administration, is looking at repealing some of those, regulations. Anytime you reduce regulations, you're reducing the cost of doing business, and that's good for domestic growth.
Obviously, a lot of folks out there, they don't have huge trading portfolios, but they got that 401k with their company, and they're trying to watch it. Is this going to be a good season for the old 401k, or is it just or is there something that folks should be looking at their 401ks and saying, yeah, you want to redirect some? Because a lot of folks just blindly do a 401k and they never watch it, don't monitor it. What would you say to those folks?
Yeah, so I definitely look at your allocations. A lot of people who go, gosh, I'm in a 60-40 portfolio or 80-20. We've seen stocks dramatically outperform bonds. So you might want to adjust your allocations. Risk is a big conversation we always have. So your 80-20 portfolio might look a lot more like, 90-10, because we've seen the bond market, have a little bit of trouble here over the last year, 2 years or so. So definitely look at your allocations. I think growth is still going to be kind of the centric focus. I think a lot of AI stocks are probably going to do pretty well, just considering kind of the optimism behind that. So I anticipate a good year in the market, but I think the domestic equities, when you look at our PE ratio, price to earnings, we're somewhere right around 28. So historically, that's rather high. So we're kind of seeing this environment where I would say a lot of stocks are kind of priced to perfection. So we want to definitely see corporate earnings increase, which we might not here in Q1. We're going to be a little bit depressed. So I think also looking at some international opportunities might make a lot of sense, just because there's some good value opportunities in the space outside of the US, and it's going to give you a little bit more diversification as well.
You talked about the positive effect that Trump and his personality can have, and some optimism and some momentum. Are there some negative effects that the old Trumpster might be having on the market and industry? Are there things that you're kind of watching? Okay, this is the good side, this is the upside, but this could be the downside.
Yeah, I think we run a big risk of alienating a lot of our trade partners. Obviously, we don't have to worry about Justin Trudeau anymore, but obviously, Mexico is a big trade partner. So we want to, implement these policies that secure the border and things like that. But and I understand why he's so bullish on that position, but at the same time, you don't want to alienate the people who are south and north of you, because they make the best trade partners just from, transportation logistics. Yep. So I think ultimately you got to maintain a good relationship with your trade partners, but you can't get walking on either, right? So you got to stand up for yourself and negotiate good deals. But at the same time, I think he toes a fine line of, not sort of quashing a lot of those people either. So
across America, the new little Lakey Unleashed stream. Folks can contact you anywhere, laymanlewis.com. They can reach out to you. And as people start a new year, we hear that every time the clocks turn back or it's daylight savings time, you're supposed to check the batteries in your smoke alarms. Are there things that people should be checking now as we begin 2025? Just overall in portfolios or overall in their planning? Is this a good time to kind of reset, renew, and review?
Yeah, no, I think it's always great. We're big on planning, having a written financial plan. So kind of that first of the year, we're sitting down with a lot of our families. We're reviewing allocations with them. We're talking about goals, objectives. We're looking at, what did we do last year in terms of tax planning for this year? How are we making contributions? How much are we contributing? So I think kind of just setting things up, now that we're sort of done with the holiday season, the sugar high is worn off a little bit. We want to kind of look a little more pragmatically at what are we looking at this year and what are we doing to make inroads, for that financial plan and ultimately saving for retirement.
Yeah. If you want to reach out to Josh Lewis, Alyssa Lewis, any of the team at Lehman Lewis, if you're in Colorado, you've heard me talk about Lehman Lewis for years. But if you're outside of the state, hey, reach out to them as well. LehmanLewis.com. LehmanLewis.com. They're good people. They're good friends, and I appreciate it. Hey, Josh Lewis, one more quick question on the tariffs. We keep hearing about tariffs. These trade partners aren't going to treat us right. We're going to put tariffs if they don't behave themselves. Justin Trudeau got freaked out about the tariffs there because he was not being a nice trade partner, and he was going to get tariffed there. Are you watching the threat and the bargaining chip of tariffs here?
Oh, absolutely. And I think kind of what we saw is kind of the mandate start here, and I think it's parsed down a little bit. So kind of that tough talk there with tariffs to kick it off there, sort of like any bargaining chip, right? You want to start high and then work your way maybe to kind of a more agreeable middle point. So it's definitely something we're watching. And it'll be interesting how all of that plays out, simply because international trade is so much of an economic driver for us and the rest of the world.
I want to put a comment up here from Joseph. He just said he's on the X platform watching us on the old Twitter. This not necessarily in your bailiwick, but it's an interesting observation. He says he's seeing very strange action from his creditors. They've been reaching out, offering a 50% reduction. The credit card companies are afraid the gravy train is over. Any observation on that? Any word about that?
Well, if you take a cue from the federal government, we're $36 trillion in debt. We've ran just a $2 trillion deficit over the last year. You look at U.S. taxpayers as a whole, we're a little over $2 trillion in debt. So I definitely think there's a lot of unsecured debt out there. And then you start looking out, and I think a lot of creditors sort of recognize this idea of, gosh, we'd rather get some money than nothing at all. So I think there's definitely, as rates remain high, right? So remember, rates, interest is kind of the cost of capital. So as that remains high, a lot of people who were planning maybe on refinancing, and lowering their debt burden, they might not see that come to fruition for a period of time. So I think there's definitely kind of a look there from creditors saying, hey, we might want to get in while the getting's good.
Joshua Lewis, it's a pleasure. Folks, reach out to Lehman Lewis Financial Group, LehmanLewis.com. LehmanLewis.com. Josh, I know you have big meetings today. You got the coat on. You're ready to rock and roll. But yes, thanks for stopping by this morning, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me. Always great time.
You got it, my friend. LehmanLewis.com, Lehman Lewis Financial Group here in Colorado, where I'm at. But they'll help you across America as you tune into the Lakey Unleashed podcast. Reach out, have a conversation with them, and they will just want to kind of guide you the right way, tax planning and allocations, and help you be able to retire when you want to retire. LehmanLewis.com. All right, let's go through some news stories today. But before I do, I believe I want to tease something. I want to tease an interview that I did, and it went up behind the paywall. Now, if you're new to the program, you know that there's two ways you can support this free daily update. The number one way you can support us is to go to patreon.com, and there's some free access there. You don't have to even put a credit card in, just say join and watch them, and you'll be fine. For instance, yesterday we put up the Doug Giles or the Mark Geist interview. Both of those went up on the Patreon, just segmented out from the show. They're free. You can go watch them. Just watch now, and you're gonna Just got to join, be a free member. Now, if you want to be a Patreon member and watch some exclusive content that is not released to the public, there was an interview by Douglas Ernst that went up yesterday. Paid content. You got to pay for that. Another one that went up this week was an interview with Dr. Thorpe, Dr. John Thorpe. And I want to play a snippet of that if we could. And this is just a tease that if you want to hear a very strongly worded interview about the government and how they lied to you and how the pharmaceutical companies lied to you back in 2020 and just the deceit that was happening, that everything was about public health, but it turns out a lot of it was about money. Dr. Thorpe exposes it all. And here's a snippet from my interview that is now up at patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. Just look for me. It's a $9.95 a month. We give you a lot of content. I think it's great content. And it's a 7-day free trial. If you don't like it after 7 days, cancel before you get your first charge. But there's also a free aspect. You can just do free. But if you do the 7-day free trial, that sets you up for $9.95 a month in 7 days. You ready? Let's play the audio or the video. This is an interview behind the paywall now at patreon.com. We'll come back and do some more news headlines. But this is Dr. Thorpe yesterday.
By money. Over $5.5 trillion was spent. And even the New York Times and Washington Post, even these liberal rags, don't know and cannot account where it went. I'll tell you where it went. My research team has published extensively on it. It went to bribe every single thread of the fabric of our society to enter into these quid pro quo arrangements, quid pro quo, called cooperative care agreements, where these are medical organizations, hospitals, pharmacies, churches, individuals of prominence, mainstream media, and they were allowed to keep the money without paying it back as long as they did not deviate from the narrative. That's exactly why many physicians, including myself, who spoke out, I was fired from SSM Health July 29th, 2023. I was heralded as a model physician for this massive Catholic healthcare system, yet the CEO, Laura Kaiser, and one of her underlings called me into the office and said, hey, we have to let you go. You've been a model physician, but we have to let you go. No cause. And by the way, if you sign this agreement, we'll give you 90. They tried to bribe me with a non-disclosure or non-disparagement clause. I said, no, thank you. And I was allowed 120 days of work with pay because I didn't take the bribe. They fired me on the spot. They had to, otherwise because they took $306.9 million, they would have had to pay that back if they didn't fire me. These people knew, these hospital administrators knew. I fed them the data that they were killing and injuring their employees and their patients. They didn't care.
I think the video froze there, but that's so you get the idea. That's exclusive content on my Patreon page, and that's not what you got to watch this interview. It's one of the most fascinating interviews I've had because he says, listen, a lot of folks knew that they were not telling the truth in 2020. A lot of folks knew they were doing things that they shouldn't do, and maybe were not necessarily behaving themselves, but it was all about the money. It was all about the Benjamins, and they were making millions of it, paid for by the big pharmas and also paid for by the feds. And they had to get rid of doctors like Dr. Thorpe. They had to get rid of doctors like that were preaching a different gospel or a different diverse. They had to get rid of them because they wanted to keep the millions of dollars. So it's a fascinating time. We'll watch that interview. Again, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. All right, we had some fun with this yesterday, asking if you were king for a day. The new Congress just started in Washington. Those of us in Colorado know that the hallowed halls of our state legislature, I call it the Dome of Dummies, they have reconvened. And I asked this fun question yesterday. I want to continue to have fun with it. If you were the king of a day or you got to pass any law that you wanted, what what law would you pass if you got to do it? One of the persons yesterday said the law that they would pass is that they would put restrictions on women wearing yoga pants. And we'd established yesterday a very firm fact that yoga pants are a privilege. They are not a right. So that's it's a privilege, not a right. I said yesterday that if I were the king for the day, I would pass a law regarding if you own a cell phone, you must always have your headphones with you, because we don't necessarily always want to hear your conversations or the little YouTube reel or the Instagram reel. Put your damn headphones on. That if I were king for a day, that's what I would pass. Other people said that there's other laws that you would pass if you could wave your magic wand or raise your royal staff and say, I'm in charge and this is what we're going to do. What would you do? That is our question of the day. As the new Congress has begun meeting in Washington and our state legislature has convened in Colorado for 2016, what are the rules that you would pass? And I think another one that I said I would pass is, if I were the king, and some of you may not like this, is I would pass a law that some of you need therapy more than you need a dog. I was coming back from Africa last Saturday, landed, when I finally got, every airport I had a layover when I hit America. Chicago was one of the places I had a layover. Then I flew back into Denver, and I felt like I was at the dog park. People had their dogs out on leashes, walking around the terminal, even some of the moving sidewalks, which you should not put your dog on a moving sidewalk because they can get their little nails stuck at the end of that moving sidewalk. But people are idiots. They're really willing to abuse their dog and put them on a moving sidewalk and walk them around an airport rather than leave them like at a doggy hotel and let them play with other dogs. And so if I were the king for the day, I would pass laws that say, some of you, if you can't go on vacation without your dog, can't take a weekend off without your little puppy dog. I don't care if it's a Labrador. I don't care if it's a Chihuahua. I would pass a law that says you can't go on vacation. You're banned from vacation. You probably should spend that money on therapy and psychiatry. That's what you should do. If I were king for a day, if you were the king for a day, comment in all the comment platforms that are out there. Comment on all of the platforms and let us know if you were king for a day and you could pass one law, what would it be? I have another one, and it goes back to one of our stolen memes that we had up there. Producer Chad, if you have the one of the airplane and the turn signals, I would pass a law, and it says if an airplane pilot can remember all of these buttons, you can use the turn signal lever. And I agree. I'm getting sick. And I was talking to my son. He's in town from college for winter break still. And one of the laws that I would pass is that it may be capital punishment if you can't figure out how to use your turn signal over and over again. And another one that I think, if I were the king for a day, I'd like to vent here. If I were king for a day, passing any law, if you're coming up to a stop sign and you're kind of like, we're a four-way stop and no one at the stop sign knows if you're going to stop because you're coming up at a full speed and you're going to hit the brakes at the last minute, you're an idiot and you should have your driver's license revoked and maybe hung from the highest tree. Listen, a little advice to you. There's a couple of, out where I live, there's a couple of roads that they're called county roads and rural areas, and you're driving down 45, 55, 65 miles per hour, whatever the speed limit is. I always try to obey the laws of the land. And people, I know these side roads are coming in and they're zooming in so quick, but I know they have a stop sign, but it doesn't look like they're going to stop. And so therefore I'm in the right of way and I have to slow down because I don't want to get sideswiped, T-boned by these idiots out there. Listen, if you see a stop sign, slow your ass down so the people that are not supposed to stop, they know you're going to stop. So if you were king for a day, what policies would you pass? That is our question of the day. Love to hear from you on that question of the day, and we can have some fun with it if you would. Anyway, if you'd like to comment on anything we're talking about, do so, and we'll put them up on the screen if they are appropriate, and that would be good. A king for a day, what laws would you pass? And again, I think it was Roger yesterday who said that the law he would pass is that you would have to know that yoga pants are a privilege and they are not a right. Somebody said yesterday, wearing yoga pants to Walmart is always a dangerous thing. Let us know if you could rule anything, what would you do? Ray says, if I were king for a day on the screen, I would make every member of Congress know and have an understanding of the Constitution. Hell, I'd like to have Ketanji Brown Jackson have a knowing and understanding of the Constitution. That'd be good. Somebody yesterday also said term limits. If you want to get serious on the topic, I would enact term limits for our hallowed halls of Congress and U.S. senators. I think that's good. Let's go back to these fires in California, and it's really tragic what's happening there. And I'm looking at it and thinking, the more I hear the lack of water, that was of a Gavin Newsom policy that they had, the lack of fire mitigation, backburning, fire breaks, all of this stuff. They stopped doing a lot of that. They spent a lot of money in California, billions of dollars on green energy, if you will, rather than burying the power lines, which would have been a big help, and continuing. They didn't even allow some fire breaks to happen because it was going to upset the environment. And I'm just wondering, and maybe I'm being too optimistic, if the people in California will finally wake up, realize that it's the policies of the Gavin Newsom administration and the Democrats that have caused this fire to be so tragic. And the fires are going to happen. You've had wildfires as long as you've had fire in the earth, in the wild. You've had those. But this fast spreading type of fire, a lot of that's going to be, it was exacerbated by some of the policies of Gavin Newsom and years of radical Democrat stupid people ruling California. And I don't know, maybe you have ties to California. Is this going to be enough for people to say, maybe we should have different types of policies? Another thing that'll be interesting in California is people that want to rebuild their homes are now going to be subject to the fact that they're going to have to rebuild to the new standards that have been approved. And I remember this if you're out of the States, you don't know it. It's called the Marshall Fire. Happened, 3 years ago? And it was out just east of Boulder, Colorado, and it went into a suburban area. And as it headed into a place called Superior, Colorado, which I used to live there, Louisville, Colorado, it wiped out entire segments of the town, entire neighborhoods. It was a really ugly fire. Well, turns out people are going to rebuild their homes. They've been living in a house in a neighborhood for 30 years. They're going to rebuild. They finally work it out with the insurance companies, and they found out that for years they had for years they had this policy. I had a gas fireplace, I had a gas stove, but nope, you have to build it all electric. You have to build all solar. And I think it was Louisville that finally backed off and allowed people to kind of build their home like they wanted to. But a lot of people got a real strange surprise when they were putting their new home developments together, and they realized they were going to have to build a home that they didn't recognize. They were going to have energy and fireplaces that they didn't recognize. They were going to have to rethink the way they lived because the city government had put in policies that were different than what they weren't grandfathered in. I think eventually they subsided and let people do it, but it was a wake-up call for a lot of the people that had elected these idiot city council members and county commissioners that were restricting how they got to build their home back. So again, is it going to be a wake-up call for the people of California? Will they figure out and recognize that a lot of the policies that they have are policies that have caused this fire to be so bad? John says it's a garbage comment. They don't have enough water. They have one of the largest desalination plants near Santa Barbara to use the ocean, and they chose not to make it operational. Again, policies. There's plenty of water. They have an entire Pacific Ocean right there, and they don't take advantage of it because they're afraid it's going to hurt some little fish or some little bacteria. And so again, policies. Will the fires in California be enough to cause Californians to finally wake up and realize you voted for this fire. You voted for this fire to burn, as wild and crazy as it is. You voted for it because you put people in place that did nothing for prevention of the fire. Steve Byrne, the comedian, I mentioned earlier that his home burned down in Pasadena. He said that, and I've heard this several times, that there's a separate board evidently in California that manages and gives the thumbs up and the thumbs down. It's not the local community. It's not the local fire department, not the local fire chief. It's like a statewide board that gives you a thumbs up and thumbs down on whether you can do prescribed or controlled burns. And evidently, since October, California has banned these burns. And you got to understand California. If you've never lived in California, I lived in Northern California for a while. I lived in the Bay Area. And this is the time of year that's the rainy season. What you do is you get all this rain in the winter, all the rain in November, December, January, maybe February, and then it greens up. It's bright green, and then it's beautiful green, and then it burns up all summer. It gets very dry, and you watch the beautiful hillsides turn brown again, and then it becomes rainy season. And that's just kind of the operation that was in the Bay Area. We could see mountains from our hills, and you would watch them turn green, you'd watch them turn brown. And in the winter, it would green up again, and then it would go brown again. That's the cycle. Well, in October, I guess maybe in thinking that they were going to have the rainy season, they said no prescribed burns. Well, they've had a very dry December, and so things were a tinderbox, and yet this board did not deviate from their stance that there's going to be no controlled burns. So again, policies in the great state of California have really caused a problem, and will it be something different? Let me do some other news stories here to zip through here. Oh, by the way, did you hear Joe Biden? Joe Biden was out in California. Was he there to help the people, and was he there to respond to it? No, Joe Biden shows up. I guess he has a great grandbaby or something. And they said, Mr. President Biden, what are you doing at the fires? He said, they have the full support of the federal government, and I'm glad to be a grandfather. No questions. Thank you. He left. That was Joe Biden, Demented Joe's response to the wildfires in California. He wanted to congratulate himself for having a great grandbaby. And you know, I guess the optimistic part is at least this is a great grandbaby he's recognizing he has. I mean, he's come a long ways. At least this one he's not denying the existence of. So there is that, but that was Joe Biden's sympathy. But again, the folks in California consistently vote for Joe Biden, and Joe Biden proved yesterday he doesn't really give a rat's patootie about them. It's all about old Joe Biden. What else do I have? I have another story here. Oh, by the way, if you could be king for a day, what were the laws that you would pass? There's a story that's out there, and I want to pull this up here on my, and I teased it yesterday, that Donald Trump is planning a victory rally, a huge victory rally, the day before the inauguration, January the 19th, Sunday, in D.C. He wants to hold a massive MAGA victory rally, and a lot of folks that are supporters of him say, don't do it. Please don't do it. And they're not doing it because they're afraid he's spiking the football. They're not doing it because he's afraid it looks like he's just all about Trump. Tyler Durden reports in zerohedge.com that the Make America Great Again victory rally is going to be held on Capital One Arena on January the 19th, night before the inauguration. And it's been reported by CBS, and the inauguration committee says as part of the inauguration festivities, and this is the Capital One Arena, is where the Washington Wizards play basketball, the Washington Capitals play hockey. It can accommodate about 20,000 people. But there's now supporters out there asking President Trump to not do this rally. You know why they're asking him not to do the rally? Because they're afraid that he'll be targeted. They're afraid the Secret Service won't be able to protect him. They're afraid that it's just not going to be good. They're afraid that with Secret Services and the incapacitation and the idiocy of the Biden administration, that people are really seriously on the record saying, Donald, this is one last chance for the swamp to get rid of you. You got to be very careful. It's a scary world that we live in when you have a sitting president going to hold a rally, and his supporters are so concerned about the current administration, the Joe Biden administration, and the fecklessness of the Secret Service, fecklessness of the FBI, Merrick Garland, that, hey, don't do this rally at the Capital One Arena. Do not do it. Do not do it. Do not do it. And it's not because they think it looks like a bad sportsmanship. They're asking him not to do it for his own safety because they don't trust this administration. Give me your thoughts on that one. Do you think that the January the 19th rally, one day before the inauguration at the Capital One Arena in D.C., is a good idea or bad idea? Let me read some tweets from the Zero Hedge story. Tara Lynn Thompson, who's a blue check mark on the X, says, truly bad idea. I hope it gets canceled. Put him in an undisclosed location until the inauguration. It's too risky for him and any attendees too. Not to be a Debbie Downer, but we do have a terrorist cell that apparently seem to be activated right now. Just think about New Orleans and think about Las Vegas. Frida, another lefty Frizzell on a blue check mark on the X, says, anybody else feel like this is a total setup? Ralph says this on the Twitter. He's another blue check mark certified Xer, says somehow this doesn't seem like a good idea right now. Somebody else says he knows his enemies are desperate and will try anything at the very last minute and he keeps putting himself out there at risk. Not only is he putting himself at risk, he's putting his rally goers at risk. You'd think he'd have a lower profile after everything that has transpired and is transpiring. Issy says this, I hope he employs massive amounts of security measures, preferably private security. You can't trust the government security. Somebody else says he needs to keep a low profile until he's sworn in. Forget the rallies. The left is absolutely insane. Keep a low profile. This is what our country has come to. And if you're a leftist troll out there watching this podcast, this is the party that you're part of. That a lot of folks say that the president-elect needs to keep a low profile, probably should be secured in a bunker somewhere until he gets into office and until they can sort out some of the swamp of the government. And once they figure that out, then he can go hold a rally. Somebody, let me read one more. They said this is a very bad idea for so many reasons. Anyone who thinks, who goes, should think long and hard about what happened on January the 6th, 2021, and how that blew up in people's faces and destroyed lives. You just can't trust the deep state at this point. Give me your thoughts. There are real people out there saying he should not do this rally, and it would be a very, very, very bad idea. All right, one more quick, let's see, that news story. Let's go to the stolen memes again. I'm going to go some stolen memes. And anybody remember Archie Bunker? You know, sometimes I feel like I'm getting older, and I saw this on a history site that I follow on Instagram. In the show All in the Family, Archie was 48 and Edith was only 44. Are we looking younger today? Is it our facial cream? Is it the soap we use? Because for me, if you ask me how old was Archie in the series, I'd say 65, 70. But in the series, his character was only 48 years old. And I think that was the real age of Carol O'Connor, that he was 48 years old. Edith was 44. And so I don't know what we're eating now. Maybe it's our diet, but good Lord. It's I don't even know I don't know. I think it must be my diet. It must be all the bananas I eat. I don't know. I don't understand. It's amazing. Amazing. Let me go through some of these Gavin Newsom things again. I want to show some of these, producer chat, because these are real funny. And it comes from Steve Burns. Steve Burns, the comedian whose house burned down in the fires in Pasadena. And he's using his comedy to deflect the pain of losing a home. And he's blaming it on Gavin Newsom. Governor Gavin Newsom is out of water and said it would take a retardant to fight the fire. That's when I handed him a bucket. That's good. Yeah, this is one of my favorites coming up next from Gavin Newsom. This is a new study says penis size. The average American is 5.57 inches. I don't know who did that research. How would you like, hey, your job to research is the penis size of Americans. I wonder if they measured the penis of the men or the women. Because you can have, we were told that the women can have one as well. The penis size, the average is American 5.57 inches. In California, the biggest penis is 6'3" inches. That's one of my favorite of all time right there. And then I think I got one more. Governor Gavin Newsom woke up to his state on fire. He must have thought he had died. I'm all about Amazing Grace, but that's funny. I don't judge the eternal, but that's funny stuff right there. Anybody, if you were on the show yesterday, Joseph says, wait, I'm 48 on Saturday. You look better in the photo there. Just that photo, you can tell he looks better than Carol O'Connor did back in the Archie Bunker days. Hey, if you have not subscribed to the Patreon page, you need to subscribe to the Patreon page. I would appreciate it if you did so. The Patreon page has a lot of great content up there, and a couple of interviews have already gone behind the paywall this week. It's content that we do not play in public because it's paywall, and they go deeper. And matter of fact, about an hour from now, I'm going to be right here in the studio recording another interview that's going to go behind the paywall, and it's going to be about Justin Trudeau in Canada and just kind of the atmosphere of what Canadians are feeling and living like. So go subscribe. There's a free level to the Patreon, but there's also it's exclusive content that you get. The exclusive stuff, you got to do a 7-day free trial. And if you don't feel it's worth it, then cancel it. You'll never be charged. It's $9.95 a month, and I think we give you your money's worth there as well. Anybody like the new backdrop? Everybody like the new, see the House of Lakey logo right there? Right now, I have my charity name up there as a sponsor of the program, Rivers Promise, but that's not permanent. We're going to add a sponsor up there. If you would like to, thank you, Joseph. He says the background looks great. If you would like to be our studio sponsor, there's a lot of perks to be the studio sponsor out there, and if you'd like to be a studio sponsor, those logos would be replaced by your logo. So reach out to us, info@jimmylakey.com, info@jimmylakey.com. I'd love to have you do that. There's a story we talked Josh Alous earlier this morning, and I alluded to this. Gas prices are expected to drop in 2025. The price of gas will go down under the Trump administration, according to Gas Buddy, the Gas Buddy app and the Gas Buddy website. Trump vowed on his campaign trail to reduce energy prices for Americans by allowing companies to drill, baby drill. The average price is expected to go way down in 2025. Let me ask you, of all the Trump campaign policies and promises that he made, is there anything that you want to see most? Politicians make campaign promises all the time, and I think Donald Trump is going to keep, as best of his ability, his campaign promises, but a lot of it depends on Congress. A lot of it depends. What are the top 2 or 3 that we have to have implemented? I think drill, baby, drill, reducing the regulatory state and letting the oil and gas and the energy communities produce according to the market's needs. I think that's a big one, and that can be done by executive order. But the problem with these executive orders is you get another idiot like Joe Biden in office, and they undo the executive order, and then we're back in the same problem. And I don't like governance by executive orders for the most part. I'd like Congress to do its job so that presidents do not have all that power of the executive order. But of all the things that President Trump has promised and campaigned on, are there things that you think would be top priority? Securing our border, I think, for many people out there would be a very big priority. And I think that's the message that the Democrats did not receive, did not get, is that it's very important that we secure the border. They're still doubling down on stupid when it comes to an open border, but I think securing the border is going to be a part of that. And you got governors like our own Governor Jared Polis, Gavin Newsom in California, who's already proved to be an idiot. You've got them saying that they want to that they're going to prevent deportations to the best of their abilities from happening. And again, you just kind of scratch your head and say, these people are absolute bona fide idiots, and they don't. So what campaign promises would you like to see fulfilled? I think on day one, he talked about it. Before he can get talked out of it, I think day one, let's release the Epstein list and let's release the Diddy list. Let's put it all out in public. Investigation and revelation of Fauci and the origin of COVID. I think that would be a fantastic one as well. I think, the Republicans control the Senate, and they need to turn Rand Paul loose and let him do the investigation of Fauci and the little effort. I think that'd be a fantastic one. And a lot of this just needs to happen on day one. Now, the Rand Paul investigation is not something that Trump has to do. He should encourage it, but Senator John Thune should already come out publicly and announce that there'll be a full and thorough investigation of the COVIDs and the Booger Cootie virus. I think that would be a top one. But the campaign promises of Donald J. Trump, I think, are very, very key. And I agree with Penny here. The border is the top one. President Trump, for the spending and the budget, you're going to go through Congress, and there's a lot of things that are going to have to go through Congress. Extending the Trump tax cut, I think that will be extended, but that's going to depend on Congress. But the things that Donald Trump himself can do, and I think he's got to do it fast, he's got to do it quick, and he's got to release the Epstein list, he got to release the Diddy list. Somebody says remaining Kennedy assassination, release that. Now, that I think was a behind-the-scenes promise of for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that they were finally going to release the remaining classified documents on the Kennedy assassination. I think that day one, and hopefully all of these department heads and these cabinet officers will go in with an edict and a mission to expose the deep underbelly state that has been existing in their agencies. And it's not about institutional loyalty it's not Republican or Democrat. It's the institution. No, it's America. And I hope that he will demand, and his chief of staff will demand, that all of these cabinet officers go in there, and these cabinet officials go in there, and they just expose it all. And they got to do it quick. They're burning files right now. We know that. The J6 committee, we know Liz Cheney's out there destroying as many files as possible. But I think even besides just political policy, I think the exposure of the deep state as quickly and rapidly as possible is going to be very, very interesting. And that's why I'm looking forward to Kash Patel running the FBI. That's the underbelly of a beast that I think is going to be, it's going to be nasty. That's going to be a nasty one there. Very, very, very nasty. All right. Glad to have you here on the radio, on the radio program, the podcasting program. We do this every morning. It's a daily update. We go through the news of the day. And of course, all eyes are on the fires in in California. And it's going to be interesting. Are these fires going to finally expose the underbelly of the stupidity of Gavin Newsom and the policies that have been reigning in California? I'm not sure. Is this going to be the tipping point for California to finally wake up? If you're watching, listening, participating in California, love to hear from you. Will this be the tipping point for California to finally get its heart right, head right, and do better in how you elect your officials? I'm not sure. I don't know what it takes for a state to wake up. You look at my home state here of Colorado. Colorado has been run into the ground. Cost of living, quality of life, everything has really gone down in Colorado, and yet people still vote in Jared Polis and these radical libs. So I'm not sure. You think a fire burning down entire cities and entire neighborhoods would, caused by policies of these politicians, you would think that people would start to connect the dots, and then they would start voting differently. But I'm telling you, unfortunately, we haven't seen that in Colorado, but it's just a big enough event in California that people will say, hey, maybe it's the people we elected that caused this to become an unmitigated disaster when it could have just been a wildfire. It could have just been a wildfire. Look at the billions of dollars that were cut from LA. That's a question I think that we probably need psychiatrists to analyze this. What does it take for people to finally wake up and change the way they vote? It hasn't happened in Colorado. I don't think there's anybody out there. I've lived in Colorado 20-something years now, moved from the beautiful state of Texas. And I'm asking the question, is there anything that's going to cause the people of Colorado to realize that Colorado is not better off than it was 4 years ago? Colorado is not better off than it was 8-10 years ago. Colorado has become a cesspool compared to where it was. It's still a great place overall, but the cost of living, the roadways, the transportation, the infrastructure, all this stuff, it's worse and worse and worse. And yet I don't see anything waking up the people of Colorado. What will it take to wake them up? What will it take to, you got breaking news. New York Court of Appeals orders Trump to appear at a sentencing hearing tomorrow. They ordered him to hear. So now that's also that's also before the Supreme Court to try to stop it. So we're waiting for the Supreme Court to make a decision there. Waiting on that to happen. So breaking news here, follow this because that's all drama. But the question is, what does it take for people to wake up? And as they wake up and start changing the way they vote, that is going to be a key in watching. Will it bring any kind of change in the great state of California that these policies have been implemented? All right, we're going to wrap it up here in just a second. But again, breaking news. There's a lot of legal wrangling right now, and a lot of the legal wrangling happening right this moment is regarding Donald Trump and should he appear in the court tomorrow. Court said rules on Trump's bid to halt tomorrow's sentencing case. That's the breaking news. Evidently, the Supreme Court of New York has said no, it's going to continue, but it's what's happening at the Supreme Court of the United States, where he appealed and said they got to get rid of this. So, yeah, the New York Court of Appeals has denied the Trump motion to stop the criminal case sentencing. They have denied that from from happening. So, but the Supreme Court of the United States has not ruled on this thing. That could be as well. All right, a couple more things that a lot of you are commenting on. Oh, Linda says, where's Jay Ratliff? Jay couldn't be on today. I apologize for not explaining that. Jay Ratliff, normally with us on Thursday. He was unavailable today. Jay Ratliff will be with us next week. Thank you, Linda, for asking that question. Our aviation travel expert, Linda, I saw that pop in, and I didn't explain that. Jay could not be on today. All right, what's the first thing that Donald Trump should do when he gets into office? Some people, again, another one, release the complete files on the Warren Commission. What campaign promise do you want to see Donald Trump carry out the most? Keep those coming in to me, and also keep the thoughts out. If you were king for a day, what piece of legislation would you do? Jim says, make public all the records in the Congressional Office of Compliance, a secret checkbook that settles out of court congressional harassment and other claims, and what other non-disclosure agreements did this office put forward to cover up our elected officials? Jim, that's a great point. We want Kash Patel to expose the underbelly of the swamp, but there's an office in the hallowed halls of Congress that when a member of Congress has been accused of maybe an impropriety, maybe been accused of a sexual harassment, that this office will come in and say, hey, if you'll sign this agreement, we'll give you a check for this number of dollars. And there are dozens, hundreds, I don't know, of settlements that have happened that never made the news because they were covered up by the swamp inside of Congress. And I think that would be something that maybe a speaker could do. The speaker, I don't know if the president can do it. That's a separate but co-equal branch of government. So I don't think Trump can do that. But where's Mike Johnson? Where are the Republicans out there saying, hey, let's make all these public? And unfortunately, they're not making them public because it's Republicans and Democrats that have used these private NDAs and settlements. And so you have members of Congress that have been accused of sexual impropriety or harassment, and it's been covered up. And it's been a checkbook, a secret checkbook. Jim's right. There is a secret checkbook that settles all of these things out of court. And Jim says one of the things that should be done is make public these records. Now, Donald Trump, if I understand, can't do that. This is the members of Congress that are keeping these secret. It's separate but co-equal branch of government. Donald Trump can't release that because the checkbook begins in the Congress. That's my understanding. But if President Trump could release a secret checkbook, I think that would be fantastical. It would be very, very nice. Marvina says the campaign promise he wants to see most, they want to see most is say, you're fired to the heads of the DOJ, FBI, CIA, the Department of Education, and the military. I agree, Marvina. I think that would be fantastic to say, hear the phrase, you're fired. All right, one more time, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. Go subscribe behind the paywall. Some great information, some great interviews, some great material back there. I do my best to make it worth your while. $9.85 a month. It supports the daily update, the free portion that we're doing now. I'd love to have you subscribe there. And there's a free level too. You can see, like, this show will be posted up there here in a bit. And if you ever want to find you missed a show, you go to patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. You can watch these for free all day long and go back in the library. But what you can't watch for free is some of the fantastic interviews that we do there. Patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. Want to remind you one more time. Inauguration Day, January the 20th. It's the end of an era. Not an era, but an error in America. And Joe Biden is going to have his ass moved out of the White House and off to the retirement home or wherever he goes. And when he does, Donald J. Trump and Melania, they're all going to show up there, and it's going to be a glorious inauguration day. Casbar Cigar. Now, it says Casbar. You say, where's that? You're watching out of state. You're watching out of the city. It's in Lafayette, Colorado. It's just outside of the Boulder area. It's in Lafayette. And you can appear there. It's free. There's going to be cigar smoking if that's going to offend you or you don't want your clothes to pick up a cigar scent. Ladies like, oh, I washed my hair today. I can't go to the cigar. Listen, this is going to be a party, and it's going to be a fun time. It's going to start right about 8 o'clock. We're going to do this very stream live from that event. I'll be there. Producer Chad will be there. We'll be on site. There'll be television monitors. You can watch it. We'll have a lot of it here. But it's going to be a fun event, and it's January the 20th in Lafayette, Colorado. Casbar Cigar, Lafayette, Colorado, January the 20th. And I'll tell you this, if you want to, if you're out of state watching us, come join us. Fly in, drive in, ride the Greyhound bus in. I don't care what you do. If you get a hotel, we got a lot of homeless shelters here. You can probably find a shelter to live in if you want to. But I'd love to see you January the 20th. We're taking the show on the road, and I'd love to have you out there with us. Producer Chad and I would love to have you there. And again, cigars shall be partaken in. And on that morning, I will tell you, there may be something other than coffee in my mug. That's all I'm going to tell you. Yeah, there's probably going to be an over and under as to by the time the right hand goes up in the air, the left hand goes in the Bible. Who's more sloshed, producer Chad or myself? Won't be me. I'm going to be drinking straight coffee that morning. It's going to be virgin coffee. That's what I'll have. My fingers were crossed when I said that. I don't want lightning to strike me. So that's it. Jim says, who will be checking every box of stuff that Joe leaves the White House with? Let's make sure he's not taking documents or the silver. Got to check Joe's boxes there to make sure. Joe, that's a great comment. No feds are allowed. Listen, at this inauguration party that I'm having, If you're an undercover FBI and trying to fake like you're one of the boys in your MAGA hat, stop it. You stay away. We don't want any feds in our party. No feds allowed in our party. I mean that. No feds are allowed there. So if you're fed, you don't come. That means they're all going to be there now, Joe. So we've tipped them. I say, what are you doing there? It's January the 20th. I hope you make plans. And it's in Lafayette. If you don't know where Lafayette is, I know a lot of you don't. You don't leave Colorado Springs, or you don't leave Fort Collins, or you don't leave Oklahoma City. And you're like, where's Lafayette, Colorado? Is that in the boondocks? No, it's just outside of Boulder. If you know Colorado, Boulder's a very expensive enclave. And it's actually, this is an establishment in the heart of Boulder County. And yet you'll find, I think all the conservatives in Boulder County, Colorado, I think hang out at Casbar Cigar in Lafayette, because it's a pretty red hat. It's a red hat society. And I ain't talking like the old ladies at the restaurant, the Red Hat Society. I'm talking about people like, there's a lot of red hatters in there, if you know what I'm saying. Make America great again. And we're going to make cigars great again January the 20th. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you, advertise with us, be a part of the program. Tomorrow we got a big time program. We'll be back here for our daily update. Would you do me a favor and become an ambassador? I told you this Monday. Now that we're out there, advertise at info@jimmylakey.com. We'll send you an information marketing packet. But also, I want to remind you this. You have all been deputized. Remember when Jesus was ascending to heaven, he let the disciples know that they should go into all the world and preach the gospel, and he gave them instructions, right? And when Barney Fife showed up in Mayberry, Andy Griffith said, you are deputized. Not necessarily the same as the Jesus ascension, but you get the idea. Everybody's got a role, and your role here is not just to subscribe and to the Lakey Unleashed and the Patreon and advertise with us, but your role is you have been deputized. If I were ascending to the heavens right now, and I'm not because I ain't Jesus, I would say go into all the world and preach the gospel and tell them to watch this daily stream every day. Take it when you see it, like it, share us on social media. An hour from now, find the link to the show and send it out. Say, hey guys, if you're not watching this, you have all been deputized like Barney Fife. You have been disciplized like the apostles. You have been told to go and preach the gospel. We really want to make a good run of this, and you can help us. So you're all deputized to spread the word about this program. If you're on X, share it on X. If you're not on X, go join X and share it on X. If you're on Truth Social, Truth Social does not allow a live stream. So all of you Truth Social people, take the cut that you'll see a little bit later of this and say, hey, share it out and let everybody know they should share it. Now, I don't know if Truth Social allows you to share an X stream, but we will have this up on the Patreon page here momentarily, free, and just share it out there and say, hey, go watch this guy on Patreon, and it's free. So help me out. You've been deputized. All of you are my Barney Fifes. All of you are the disciples. That sounds weird. That sounds very cultish, doesn't it? I repent. I'm sorry I said that. You're all been deputized. Spread the word about the show. Ladies and gentlemen, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Thanks for being a part of the program this morning. Thanks for joining again tomorrow in advance. Thanks to Joshua Lewis at Lehman Lewis Financial Group for being a part of the show. We'll continue to cover the California fires. And I guess tomorrow is going to be a big day. That's supposedly the sentencing of Donald J. Trump in that New York case, and we'll follow that in real time tomorrow morning on the show. I mean this from the bottom of my heart, and I mean it sincerely. Thanks for being a part. Thanks for sharing your morning with us. Share it and like it to all your friends. We'll be back here tomorrow morning. Good Lord, running the creek so rise. May God bless you. May God bless America. I am Jimmy Lakey, broadcasting from the House of Lakey and the Lakey Entertainment Towers. Peace. I'm out of here.